it is being recorded, and I will make sure that I'll send you the recording for those of you who have actually registered, because it's the only way I can actually send it to you. So let me just double check. Heiko, yep. So I guess as I speak and while Heiko comes on, if you have any questions, like I said, just jump on and let me know, and I can answer your questions. The first thing that really, I guess, where I want to start is this whole concept of personal cultivation or personal development or self-development. And I guess, why is it important? And although it's obvious that, our medicine, Chinese medicine specifically, is really greatly in depth in terms of personal cultivation, but why I'm so introducing this concept to business is because it's just important in our business life as it is into our personal life as well. So in terms of our personal life, of course, it's common sense, right? We constantly experiencing challenges and dilemmas, and our stress is really based on our adaptability and resilience to overcome some of these external changes that we are faced with. And so in business, it's the same concept. So in business, we come across many challenges every day, and really it's based on our emotional resilience and adaptability to adapt to these changes. So although personal cultivation or self-development work is important, it is just as important in business. The problem is, of course, that most of us probably separate personal cultivation work and keep it just in our personal lives. And we sort of negate or neglect to introduce that into our business life. And of course, the problem with this is that when we are working around on improving our business, or even for startups, for people who are going into business, if you're so focused on just the business side of things without having an understanding of the emotional resilience that's required, naturally this is going to cause some conflict down the track. And of course, in the beginning of any business, it might be some stress, but of course it might be excitement because you're going into practice. So especially for a postgraduate, I've been lecturing for some time now, about 14 years. I stopped a little while back because I had my other ventures that I've got laid into with time, so I didn't have time to go back into lecturing. But seeing postgraduate students come finish their 4-year degree here in Australia and then go into practice, it was a pretty stressful time, but at the same time quite exciting. And of course, the excitement was great, but the challenge is once they experience their first, you could say business trauma or challenge, that's when the real test begins. So that's when they will start to experience some of these conflicts, and either they're going to grow with the conflict and expand on their skills and development, or they're going to contract and probably withdraw and hide away. So it's really important for us to understand the concept of self-development on par with business development or business growth. And where I'll start is actually a really good quote that I read once. It was actually from Jim Rohn, who said, "Formal education will give you a good living, whereas self-education will give you a mass fortune." So formal education is the university degree. It's sorry guys, I'm just trying to see if I can still get Heiko, and is still having difficulty. All right, Heiko, it might look like it might come on soon. So it did when we were testing before, it's doing the same thing as before. So just keep at it, buddy. I'm sure you'll get there. But anyway, so formal education is our university degree. So we all go and study. We, go through the process of 4 years of our technical knowledge, increasing our technical skill and our ability to treat. The problem is, of course, we come out and we don't have any business skills in terms of how to get our first client. So the formal education side of things is great, but if we're not working on ourselves, the self-education, that's where the biggest gap is. So formal education will give you a good living, whereas self-education will give you a mass fortune. Now, I've got to clear up the fact that mass fortune is not just in terms of money. So something I will talk about today, which is the concept of money and wealth. But although it says mass fortune in terms of your wealth is also in the same family as health. So welfare and healthcare are from the same family. So when it says formal education will give you a good living, whereas self-education will give you a mass fortune, well, the self-education is really what's going to create the vast abundance in your practice, because your practice is a byproduct of who you are. And the results that you get in practice really is also the result of your emotional intelligence. Now, you might think that's not completely correct, because you'll go and do CPD events to get your points, and you learn your technical skill, and then you'll go and apply them, and then you might see some great results, which is excellent. But then, of course, there comes a time when you'll start to hit the challenge again. So once you hit this challenge again, it still comes back to the same test, which is the emotional resilience and the emotional intelligence. And this is why it's so important. So the quote, "The mass fortune," is really about not just your welfare, but also your healthcare. Now, another powerful statement that I once read was about entrepreneurship. And some of us sort of tend to feel that practitioners have no association to being an entrepreneur, and that's completely fine. But it was just a really nice little piece of statement that resonated with me. And basically it said that entrepreneurship is doing a couple of things, or just a few things, tough for the first few years, only to have a lifelong of the kind of life that you want for the rest of your life. I'm just paraphrasing for the moment. So it's really about putting in the hard yards in the beginning and learning some systems and principles. And then we use these principles and systems to gain the resiliency and the education to then have the kind of life that we want. And another great statement on the same quote, or in the same family of quotes, is a lady who said that entrepreneurs are the kind of people who would rather work 80 hours a week in order to avoid working 40 hours a week for someone else. So most of us practitioners are self-employed, or we're subcontracting in a multimodality clinic, for example, but ultimately we're self-employed. And so we are working for ourselves. So even if you're working for an organization, if you're not growing from within, you're going to hit a cap at some point. And so for some of you who've been in corporate work, so corporations, you'll probably know that the biggest problem in corporations is recruitment. In terms of the most expensive process of corporation is recruitment. That's basically meaning the hiring new staff. And so that leads me to talk about rapport and relationships and emotions, because everything is based on an individual's capacity to really relate to a client. So the fact that we are working for ourselves, even though we're working for someone or subcontracting to someone, is a pretty important deal, because obviously it's our own personal growth among the business side of things. And our growth is a reflection of the kind of growth that we see around us. So I want to move on to talking about values, because that's really where I start with all my talks, whether it's the psycho-emotional seminars that I do or the business side of things. So values is something that is demonstrated every day according to your highest priority actions. So I'll just say that one more time. Your values are what your life actively demonstrates according to your priorities, and those priorities are based on the actions that you are taking every day in life. So when you say to someone, so if you ask one of your clients, or maybe if I ask you, what are your values, the very common answers that I get is, of course, things like, trust and integrity and honesty and dignity and, things of this nature, which is sort of common sense, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the problem is they're not necessarily values. You can have a value on trust, of course, but if I spend some time with you, say over a week, and I see that you are constantly deceiving yourself or deceiving other people, and you're not necessarily being honest, then here we go. We've got Heiko coming on. I can see you.
Sorry about that, but my biggest fear is technology stuff, and of course, the computer was updating, and then Irene actually worked out that for some reason it was going through my mobile phone. And that's why it wouldn't let me get onto the computer.
Yeah, for a presenter, because you need to split the screen. It's a bit hard on the mobile. But anyway, that's good that you're here. I'll just continue what I was talking about. Then you can start off with the questions that you might have. So we've got Heiko online, guys. So I hope you can see and hear Heiko very well as well. And so coming back to the values. So if you have a trust on value and honesty, and I come and spend some time with you, and I see that during the week you are deceiving yourself and you're deceiving other people and you're not being honest with other people, that's actually a contradiction to what you're telling me, which is a value on trust and honesty. So values is what your life actually demonstrates, not what you want in terms of what you're saying to people. And so if you look around the room, your space, where you are, and see the kind of items around you, you'll get a good idea about the things that you value. So I'm sure that you can probably tell behind me, I have a strong value on research and education. And if I if I say I have a value on business and you come and spend 7 days with me and you don't see me call one client or serve one client or respond to any emails or do any kind of marketing strategies or try to anticipate some market change, then really again it's another contradiction. So values is what your life demonstrates. And so when you say that you might have a problem in business or in practice, and I come and spend some time with you, and I see no activity being towards you putting towards your business, then it's a very clear sign that you actually don't have enough value on the business side of your life. And that's completely fine, because what you're saying to the universe, really, or in this particular me, is that you don't actively have any value, whereby you are taking action daily to manage and grow your business and practice. So it just means that you are simply projecting your time, your energy, your resources elsewhere. It could be your family, it could be your children, it could be your hobbies, it could be health and wellness. Obviously, you probably like treating people, which is the health side of things. But if you're struggling getting people through the door, you're saying to me that you have the value on treating people and serving, but you don't have enough value on finding people and helping people. And that's where the contradiction is. So that's really the important system of values and value structure. So every single treatment that I do in clinic, the first session, there's only 3 things that I talk about. And the first one is values, the second one is goals, and the third one is to gain a sense of their gratitude in terms of where they are emotionally. Because what's the point of me trying to help someone overcome, say, 20 years of depression, if their goal is actually not to get better, right? So I need to sort of have a gauge on what their goals are. And most of the time, it's actually not, I want to get better. They might be here for me to help them get better. Their money is being used to get better from depression. But their values, their actions are showing me that that's not the case. And the best example to help people understand this is a quote from Carolyn Myers, who said, healing is like when people get on the boat to heal, but they never really like to get off on the other side of the shore, which means they want to go and search around, pay people for money, bits and pieces, but that they truly want to heal. And the answer is probably no, because their value, their goals aren't aligned to moving towards a higher state of health and wellness. So anyway, that's a little bit about values. And so coming back to the practice side or the business side, if you are struggling with business and clients, it's only a matter that your active investment of energy, time, and resources is not being spent on growing and marketing your business. Now, of course, the objection to that is you might say to me, well, Sohial, I spend a lot of time on my business, and I try to spend a lot of time on marketing and trying to get clients, and I'm still not getting anywhere. Well, that's what we're trying to explore in this phone call, and of course in the 2-day workshop I'll go through this stuff in depth. But if it comes to that situation where you are honestly trying but you're not seeing the result, then there's probably an underlying block there somewhere. And then most often than not, in 10 years of doing this particular workshop to practitioners in Australia, most often than not, it's something to do with an emotional charge about or around guilt and shame and money as well. So, for example, when someone says that I spend a lot of time working on my business and trying to do marketing strategies, and I try to serve clients and contact clients, and I'm still not busy, well, there's a difference in terms of what your output is doing. How is it being measured? Because there's a substantial difference between being busy and being productive. Yeah. So I'll say that again. There's a difference between being busy and being productive. Most people are just simply busy, but they're not necessarily producing. And so your production is where you harvest in terms of results. So the amount of clients you harvest is based on what you produce. So you could be busy by shuffling around some papers on a Monday morning. You could be busy, cleaning things up on your computer or your desk, maybe cleaning your needle shelf or your herb shelf. That's not really what I'm referring to. And yes, you probably need to do that at some point. But when it comes to actually building and growing the business side of things, you need to be doing things that are productive. And so what is productive? Well, productivity is a measure of what you are getting back in result based on the time that you were putting in. And it works on a couple of laws. The first one is called the law of compensation. And the law of compensation basically states that you get back from the universe that which you put out. And so, for example, if I have all day today at home, 9 to 5 or 9 to 6, to finish a task that will really take me 2 hours, generally speaking, that task is going to take me the whole day to finish, right? And I'm sure you probably experienced this yourself. If you're not prioritizing and structuring your day based on productivity to make sure that you have an asset, so you're working on assets, which is the production, then you're going to spread that energy out throughout the whole time. And that particular 2-hour task is going to take the whole day to do it. Because every time there's time available, human beings generally fill that time, and therefore they feel busy. And then they come home dead tired and they say, I had a busy day. Yes, you might have had a busy day, but you're probably not producing. The second thing is the rule on Pareto's principle, which is a rule named after a gentleman by the name of Vilfredo Pareto in Italy. And simply he realized that 80% of the land in Italy is actually owned by 20% of the population. And so that particular formula was translated in so many different domains. For example, right now, the top 20% of your clients are generating 80% of your revenue. The top 20% of your herbs is generating the 80% of the revenue, which is you're using 20 ingredients, and that's covering 80% of the many formulas that you make. If you have staff, the top 20% of your staff are the hardest working staff, for example. And so you can translate that rule and reverse it. So 80% of your clients generate a small 20% fraction of the revenue. 80% of these ingredients are generating only 20% of these formulas. 80% of your staff are bringing in only 20% results. The problem is if you're not being productive, most people, unfortunately, through observation, work on the bottom 80%. And they do this because it's trivial, it's easy. It might be dead boring, but it's easy and non-challenging. And so productivity is trying to work on the top 20% challenging tasks so that you can walk away at the end of the day with 80% results. And if you start to work on this philosophy where you value working on the top 20%, you generally take a lot of time back in your day-to-day, and you'll be more empowered and more motivated to do more for your business. So that's the first thing I wanted to start on, which is your values, which is what your life is demonstrating. And therefore, if your life is demonstrating that you're onto getting results, that means you are producing. If your life is demonstrating that you're simply just doing generic tasks, it means you're busy, but not necessarily producing, like getting enough clients. So anyway, that was my little start. Heiko, where are you at, mate? What, you got something to say, or?
Well, yeah, we've got so many things to say. I don't know if I can say anything to add to that. But just one little comment that I've had when I was very first in practice, maybe my first or second year, and I was going through various, stresses and not enough patients, and, patients were draining me and dragging me down and whatever. And then I was talking to one of my patients, and then, and who I'm still in contact and friends with now, actually. And he said, well, don't you realize, Heiko, that you're not here for the patients. The patients are coming here for you. You're here to learn from the patients, and that little bit of stuff that you do is just part of the package along the way. It's like it's your own personal growth, and to teach you, I don't know, communication, confidence, how to market. So I wonder if you got any comments about that statement.
Yeah, that's really good. And that's actually true. Actually, when we go into clinic, in our clinic room, whether you're working from home or in a clinic space, the reality is that's your space. So when a client comes into your space, it's like having a guest. So if you come into my house, I'm sure that you'll be my guest and I'll be the host, and you won't go into my random places in my house, go through and do just anything you want. You'll have most likely enough respect to treat me as a host, and you're my guest. And so the relationship between a client and a practitioner is the same thing, which means the client is the authority, but that can only happen based on the value you bring to your client, which means the client brings education to you. So you're absolutely right. And what I've noticed, especially working with the emotional side of things, is that almost all the time, the kind of clients that we attract in our clinic is really the universe trying to attract our own broken parts, which means the kind of things we work with, the clients are actually helping us really heal some of our own broken parts in order to make us whole. So we learn a great deal from our client. And what you said again is on point, because if we think about it, when it comes to not just what your actions are in terms of your value, but in terms of what you actually charge, for example, you might charge $80 and I might charge, let's just say, $500, or you might charge $500 and I might charge $80, right? So if we're both offering a very similar treatment, so we both say acupuncture and herbal medicine, and we spend 1 hour with a client, and one of us is charging $80, one of us charging $500, but yet we're sharing the same time and providing theoretically the same service, well, then what's the difference? The difference, of course, is the increased value proposition that I'm bringing to that client in that given time. And the key here is I don't determine that. So the client who's coming to see me determines my value. So the market determines my value contribution. Now, if I charge $500, I better have at least 10 times more than that in value to give back, because the transaction only occurs on the exchange of value, not time. Now, we can say we charge per hour, which is what sort of most of us do, or we have a 45-minute session, an hour session, and so on. But the reality is people pay on result. So the value end result is what you are getting paid for. So if someone's giving me $80 and someone's giving you $500 for a very similar treatment, they have determined in their perception that you can bring more value in the same hour than I can. And so when we work on ourselves, like heal our broken parts, self-education, then we can actually increase our value contribution, and we will attract that kind of client into our doors. And that's so important, because we ourselves, as the authority, often submit and subordinate to a client, and then they take over and take control. And so we get all hesitant and sort of nervous and scared about the steps needed to get them to advance in healing. So just as an example, we might say after the treatment, oh, well, look, is it okay for you to come back? Or would sometime next be okay for you to come back? Like, this is a very hesitant, unstructured way of getting a commitment from a client. Because like you were saying, the client is there to come and see us, and we're the authority. So we need to structure a plan, a proposal for a client so that they can invest into that plan. But when it's a little bit scattered, they're thinking, hang on a second, this practitioner doesn't really feel certain in the treatment plan that they've actually just proposed to me. I think I'll go elsewhere. I think I'll think about it. It's probably too expensive. I can't afford it. I'll go and speak to my partner about it. And so they raise these objections because of our own uncertainty.
Yeah, that's very true. But just if we can talk about that, what practitioners charge and what they're worth or believe that they should charge. Because I do know a lot of practitioners I talk to, they'll say, oh, look, I'm only charging $60 or $70 or $55 or whatever the figure is. But, John Smith down the road, he's charging $90, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, we all say, yeah, well, we should put up our fees. We feel like we know even more than the other guy who's charging more.
Yeah.
But it's that, I don't know, is it a lack of confidence or a belief? We all know we should probably put up our fees. I'm wondering if your weekend seminar is going to give us a few little tricks, because I'm guilty of it myself. I haven't put up my fees for 3 years, right? And my accountant says, you know, people are charging $80 for a massage, and you're charging 70 for acupuncture. You know, you need to put it up. Oh, and then I'm guilty of it, and I say, they can't afford to pay 80. You know,
Yeah.
so I'm hoping you have some tricks for me at the weekend that I can go back on Monday and put my fees up.
All right. So yeah, great point. And for 10 years or so, this is an ongoing, I guess, challenge that people are having. And on the first day, I cover a big section on money psychology and the psychology of wealth, and all this is included. But just for the audience for today, who probably won't be able to make it or won't be there, I'll cover a couple of things. So the first thing is that you said that you haven't increased your prices in 3 years, and yet most industries, the staff in an industry, like in a corporation, get an annual salary raise every year between 1% and 3%. So everyone's already used to asking for more money. And so if you're not doing it and you feel because you might lose clients or it's too expensive or people can't afford it, well, the first thing is that these people are themselves asking for more money. So they know that you should be also asking for more money. Now, it's never about the money, it's about the service. The money is simply the byproduct of your service. So this is not the concept of, hey, just raise your prices for no reason. Because the only time you can raise your prices if you raise your contribution. Okay. So if you're charging $60, and let's just say it's an hour consult, which is very low, but let's just say it's an hour consult. And let's just say after this little chat on Monday, you charge $95 because the person down the road is also charging $95. And so the client is thinking, okay, I'll pay the $95, but what measurable difference are you going to give me that I can tangibly measure in my head in terms of the gap that I have to pay now and extra, say, $20, $30, $35, $40 more? So this is really, really important, because if you want to increase your prices, you got to be willing to increase your value. Now, the interesting thing is, though, in the market, so this is not my opinion, this is the market. The market determines your value based on perception, their perception, and not reality. Now, this is really important, because price is something that's tangible. Value has no tangible or tangibility in it, which means if I can't determine the value that I'll get for $95 from you, whereas previously you were charging me $60, if I can't determine the value, then I can only shop on price, because price is subject to tangibility. I can see it. I can see on your website, on your card, you're verbally telling me that it's $60. But value, I can't see. So value is intangible. So if you're going to increase your prices, it must come with a background of extra value. Now, can you get extra value overnight? Probably. You probably already have it. But it's just that the client needs to determine that, not me, not you. So if you start, for example, doing some marketing and getting your message out there and doing some educational videos and educational posts and blogs, podcasts, when you start to raise your vibration, the market is drawn to it, because now they see you as an authority and you've now become a more valuable proposition in the market. And again, this is the market determining that, not you or not me. So I remember this because I was charging about $85, but I was learning a lot. So I spent a lot of time learning and wanting to obviously execute the learning that I'm doing. Either I attend seminars or I read things myself and listen to podcasts. And so when I was learning, the execution, the energy wasn't being released. So I started to resent my work, my clinic, because I was learning a lot, but I was still only getting a small reward. And so in order for me to continue the motivation to increase the reward of my contribution, which is raising, I increased my prices. And not only did I increase my prices, I reduced and took off the labor. So in the first session, I don't do any needles anymore. The first session, I go through the values, the goals, and the gratitude. And not one person has complained. Why? Because I've raised the value contribution in the first session. In fact, clients actually say, oh, we've run out of time, and I've taken your time. Please don't needle me. Like, let's do the treatment next time. They say that themselves. So value is something that we need to raise. Otherwise, people will always end up shopping on price.
So I do know there's another chiropractor in town here, or actually in the next town, and I get her email newsletters, and then you get the email newsletter, and then it'll be like, oh, I've just been to Brisbane and I've done a new chiropractic, SOT kinesiology course or something, and I've been there and blah blah. And it was this fantastic speaker from the States and whatever, and then the next sentence is and our fees are increasing from $75 to $80. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. So, but she feels very confident about doing that. But yeah, I think it is a good strategy. It puts her value in it. Well, she must just, and rightfully so. I've just spent $2,000 on doing a course. Need to make that up by charging an extra $5 for the next 3 months or whatever.
Well, exactly. So a byproduct of what you will do, which is to increase your prices, a byproduct is only going to be, you're going to probably eliminate some clients. Fair enough. You're always going to get some people to shop on price, which is a given. That's a common sense. But you're going to start attracting the ideal client. Okay. So one mistake that most people do is they say, I'm raising my prices. No one wants to pay more, right? So when I hear the words increase or raise prices, I'm a consumer. I buy things and I don't like it, right? So it doesn't matter how much money you have. It's just that people don't like to pay more. They want to get a good deal. So the first thing is not to say I'm increasing my prices. And the first thing is to say that I'm changing my pricing structure. And that's really important because that could mean anything, right? But most people are very, very okay with that, receptive to it, rather than saying I'm increasing my prices. That's the first thing. The second thing is, again, when it comes to ideal clients, you're going to probably eliminate some of the non-ideal clients, but at the same time attract the ideal clients. Now, this is something that we always get objected to in our seminars, but it's a very important concept of ideal clients. And the key is that I said an ideal client. I didn't say the right client, okay? Because the right client means I'm coming with a form of judgment. I think you're right and I think you're wrong. That's not what I'm saying. I'm simply saying an ideal client. So what is an ideal client? An ideal client is someone who's going to always be there, rarely cancel, completely follow your instructions, buy all the herbs and supplements that you get them on, rave about you, and increase the word of mouth branding because they absolutely love what you do. These people will not actually challenge you on price. It's the non-ideal clients that will always complain about how much they have to pay. Now, again, a small segment of the population, it's always going to be that way, and it's completely fine. There's a really powerful statement that I heard, and it said this: every single human being will always try to get a discount or a great deal, but they will always end up paying for the best solution. So I'll just say that one more time. Human beings always want to get a great deal or a discount, but they will always end up paying for the best solution. Now, you and I have done this ourselves. We might go to, buy a fridge or a washing machine or maybe even a car, and we have a specific budget, and we don't want to go past this budget. And so we go and see a salesperson, and they tell us all the great features and benefits of this product, and then we say, I'm going to go and think about it. And then we go next door to the competition, and we see another product, same sort of thing, a car or washing machine or fridge, and that product is about $400 more, but the way they've communicated the value, maybe the warranty, the repair, the instructions, the tutorials, where it's made, all these extra fancy values, we'll end up paying $400 more above our budget because the solution was more proportionate to what we were looking for. And so that's the most important thing, that clients need solutions, not all the time what they just say. I can say I want releasing back pain, but ultimately the release of back pain might mean that I can go and play basketball quicker than later. So that's my ultimate solution. Back pain is just a quantitative approach to get me closer to that solution.
Now, I think when you mentioned more about this ideal client, and I think we're going to be talking about that at the on the weekend, aren't you? And I think
absolutely.
Is that one of Hamish's specialties or something?
Hamish will do a complete segment in it. I'll talk about the psychology of the ideal client, a little bit about statistics in terms of the evolution of getting to that ideal client, and then Hamish will do a complete segment on it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you already summarised with those 5 points. I like those 5 points. I have to start to remember those and write them down and tick them off. Make the patient tick them before I treat them.
Well, I'll give you another very simple example. If you called up my clinic right now and I pick up the phone, at that very moment, you are a suspect. So you literally could be a criminal, or you could be my competitor, or you could just be someone that doesn't know anything about what I do, and I don't even know if I can help you. So you're a suspect. When you ask me a evaluated question on what I do, such as, look, I heard acupuncture is great for my anxiety. Is that something that you can do, Sohial? Now you've become a prospect, because you can become a prospective client. When you and I have a chat and you agree to come and see me, and then you come into my clinic and we do a treatment, and then you give me money for it and you leave, at that stage you're a customer. But when you return for repeat treatment, now you become a client. And when you stay, you become now a culture, a value culture, which is called a raving fan or an avatar in business. So now you are part of my clinic culture. And the key is to get people to evolve from suspect, prospect, customer, client, and a raving fan. The difference between a customer and a client is a customer is a one-off transaction and a client is a long-term commitment. And the word client actually comes from a Latin word clinere, which actually means to lend, to bend on someone. So a client relies and bends on you for support over long term.
Right, that's really good. Now, this the 2-day seminar. What are some of the other topics that you'll be covering? You've mentioned a little bit so far. Yeah. What are some of the other in relation to how we can get a prosperous practice per se?
Yeah, sure. So it's 2 days. So the first half, the first morning is really myself, and I go through the structures of the brain, the different brain regions in terms of how we can apply what these regions do to our business. For example, having foresight in a greater vision, or having emotional reactivity, or having habitual past. So we have hindsight, foresight, things of this nature. I'll go through the psychology of a winning business, mindset strategies, leadership strategies, where your business is at. There's 4 quadrants in a business. So, you have inception, you have growth, you have maturity, you have decline. So where you are at, things of that nature. And then Hamish will come and talk a little bit about some of the actual problems you're having in your practice now, the mechanical problems such as expenses, the kind of marketing that's not working, how you are in your teams, the systems that you use. And then I'll come back and talk about inspiration, motivation, self-image, confidence, a lot more of the internal emotional resilience, emotional quotient kind of stuff. And then Hamish will talk a little bit more about mechanical strategies, about the rules of marketing, how to build on the 4 golden rules of marketing, for example, or the 3 prerequisites of client attraction, acquisition, and retention. And then day 2, I talk about this prospecting, like how to get to that ideal client, the kind of funnels we need to build, the kind of like social media marketing, for example, online website, doing videos, all this kind of tech stuff. Hamish will talk about structures in terms of reactivating existing clients. So the most important thing you need to do first is to reactivate clients that you already have, because it's the cheapest way. It costs you 9 times more to get a new client rather than actually holding on to an existing client or an inactive client. So you nurture your current clients, you reactivate old clients, then you ask for referrals, and then you go for new clients. So Hamish will go through the structure and the importance of that. He'll go through some ideas about public speaking and the importance of actually getting your message out there. So, for example, if you love what you do, in my opinion, you have an ethical and moral obligation to do more of that. And so you need to get your message out there more. And everything that we do is going to have both theory and practice. So by Monday morning, you'll be able to apply this. I remember doing a version of this particular workshop that we're planning doing in Auckland in February. I have a 3-day version that I do myself. And before the workshop had finished, on the second day of day 2, one of the clients, one of the attendees there, actually filled up her week before Monday even arrived, just because of some of the mental shifts and that happened within her. Because ultimately, it's all about some mental stuff. If we can make some shifts in our perception, then the clients will proportionally start to grow as well. Very Ethereum, but also extremely practical as well.
Because I know the old saying that we use in relation to needling, called the chi follows the thought, meaning that if you're thinking clear and you're holding onto the needle like you're holding onto a tail from a tiger and you're all focused, then when you put your point in liver 3, it's going to move the chi and blah blah. But I think this particular saying, can actually just be used for your whole practice and for how you're getting your clients. Because as you said, if you can help us with, I don't know, self-esteem and confidence and self-belief, if we have that chi of that or that thought in our head, then the chi / the patients, the money, the income, the productive practice, it should follow. So I'm looking forward to that Monday morning when my thoughts have changed, so the chi's going to flow better for us.
Look, absolutely. I mean, you're spot on. And in our medicine, that is a great analogy. Liver 14, for example, is called the gate of completion, or sometimes the gate of hope. So, for example, if you're stuck and you're procrastinating, which is huge in business, or in life as well. So procrastination is really just stagnant liver chi, right? Because liver goes outward and upward. And when it's not going upward, it's resigning. So we resign in life. So we get into a state of procrastination. So once the chi can flow through the diaphragm, which is really the barriers, if you look at it psychosomatically, the diaphragm being the wall that's holding us back. Once we can get the chi moving by shifting our perception, it goes into the lung. The lung is your inspired state. The liver is your aspired state because it aspires outward. So now we have aspiration and inspiration towards a higher goal. And the internal branch of the liver goes into do 20. And so the etheric soul, once we pass away, goes into the heavens to explore your cultivations on planet Earth, your achievements, in other words. So it's the same concept. When the chi flows, energy follows thought. And energy comes in and out of existence in 50 billion bits of information per second. So it's so quick. And that information that you're seeing outside, the material result, is based on your energy. And that's being governed by your thought, which is governed by your 5 senses, which is governed by your limbic brain, which is your emotional brain, which is not your executive brain, which you need as a leader in business. It's the same concept in business.
All right. Well, I think we probably should leave that there. So we thanks so much for your time, Sohial. And of course, you'll be able to just check on the Facebook page for the seminar. But it is the 29th of Feb and 1st of March, 2 days up in Auckland. We're looking to try to get 30 people there. That'll be the max that we can fit into the room. And we're about halfway there now. So looking forward to everybody coming. And then any questions, of course, everybody knows how they can contact me.
I'm just looking at my computer up here, and there is a question. I'm just going to quickly, it's on the live page. So it says, inspire. Neil Foxcroft says, inspiring. Would love to hear more. Won't be in the country this time, but hope there will be next time. No problem, Neil. Hope we can catch you next time. Ronnie Neely says, do you think it is also a matter of time and experience, or can do well straight from the outset? Obviously, your confidence grows in experience, but that can also be a catch-22. So, yeah, that's a great point, Ronnie. The thing is, just like it is in healing, there's a concept in healing that says time heals. My version of that is not actually in support of that. I don't think time heals. I think love and gratitude heals. So, yes, there's definitely time needed. but it's also dependent on how quickly you want to resolve some of the emotional baggage you are carrying in order to fasten that track. I've been in practice for 18 years. In the first 12 years, I was taking a lot of time to get my stuff together. But in a very short time, in 2012, when I shifted my perception, nothing to do with my past experience, so to speak, in clinic, it was just a shift in perception about my higher vision. In a very short time, I managed to create substantial change. So yeah, some things can, of course, take time. But we also need to make sure that emotional baggage is not holding us back so that we can be liberated. And once we are liberated, we can break through and elevate and reach an ongoing level of mastery, which is a day-to-day event. So thanks for that note. I don't think there's any more questions on the Facebook. There's no questions here. Let me just check here. No more questions, Heiko. So let's finish it up now. So yeah, end of Feb, we'll be in Auckland. So we thank you as well, Heiko, for arranging all this and organizing us.
Yeah, sorry about the techo thing. It came down. I just had to switch my phone off, and then it worked. Don't ask me why.
All right. I think I've got the recording based on sort of the time you came on, so it's not a big deal. It happens. Yeah. Anyway, look, thanks for your time as well for being here with me today, and I'll send the recording probably tomorrow, the next day, as soon as I get it sorted. Thanks again, everyone who's been online with us. Thanks for your time. And for those of us who's going to join us in Auckland, thank you. We'll see you there. Otherwise, I'm sure we'll catch you online in another conference call soon. So thank you.
All right. All the best. Thanks again, everybody. Cheers. See you.